On April 1st, 2023, a new transfer tax went into effect in the city of Los Angeles that imposes a massive tax on high-value real estate transactions across the city. Popularly known as the mansion tax, it says that any home sold over $5 million will now be subject to a 4% tax, and all properties sold or transferred for over $10 million will be subject to a whopping 5.5% tax. The purpose of all of this is to create an additional stream of tax revenue for the city of Los Angeles, and the additional revenue is supposed to be used to help the homeless problem out there. But not everybody thinks that this new tax is fair, and some even believe that this money won't even necessarily be put to good use. The opposition to this new mansion tax is so strong that a group called the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association has filed a lawsuit in an attempt to put a stop to the new mansion tax. And as a result, Los Angeles has delayed spending most of the funds raised by the mansion tax until these legal challenges are resolved. This story generated a surprising amount of attention when I first reported on it, with over 6 million views and counting across all of my accounts. But to understand a little bit more about what's going on with this lawsuit against the mansion tax, I've actually invited somebody onto the show from the Howard Jarvis group to share with us everything we need to know. I think that you guys are going to love this chat. Let's bring Susan on and talk about the mansion tax. All right, thanks for joining, Susan. I'm really looking forward to learning more about the Howard Jarvis organization and what you all do to support California taxpayers, and specifically what you're doing here with this mansion tax. So let's kick it off there first by just giving everybody an overview on what your company is all about.
Okay, well, it's a nonprofit organization in California. It's an association that represents taxpayers. It's also a foundation that does legal and educational work, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Foundation, which is a 501c3 under the IRS code. And the association is a 501c4, so it does lobbying and a little bit of politics. But when we do campaigns for something that's on the ballot, under California law, that's a separate fundraising operation for campaigns. So we have the Protect Proposition 13 campaign and the No New Taxes campaign, that we have those committees. So we have a lot of different entities that are all focused on protecting California taxpayers from crazy ideas that take your money. That's the mission of the organization.
I love that. So before we get into the mansion tax specifically, could you share with everybody what is Proposition 13 that you guys have been working to protect?
Well, Proposition 13 was a cap on how much property taxes can rise in California. And the history on this is that back in the 1970s, with inflation raging, much as it is now, even worse perhaps, home prices were going up very quickly, and property taxes were based on the market value of your home. So people who had bought a home, which they could afford, and maybe they'd even paid it off, were suddenly receiving tax bills for homes that were 10 times in value what they had paid, and they could not afford it. And the legislature just wouldn't do anything about it because the money was rolling in and the government was happy, but the voters were outraged. So there were 5 separate efforts to put something on the ballot to do something about it. And on the 5th try, what became Proposition 13 went on the ballot, passed with nearly 2/3 of the vote, even though every organization and government official in the state was against it. The voters had had enough. So Prop 13 cut the tax rate from a statewide average of 2.67% to 1%, and it put a cap on how much property taxes could go up while you owned your property. So now there's a cap of 2% on your assessed value. So the longer you hold your property, the more Proposition 13 is benefiting you, but it benefits everybody, even if you bought your home last year. If market prices go up 10%, your assessed value cannot go up more than 2%. So you have certainty about how much your property taxes will be.
Now, you guys know I don't get political here at all, but Prop 13 seems kind of beneficial to everybody across the board. I mean, it allows the city to raise property taxes some every year, which in theory is good for the overall local economy, but capping it at 2% just makes it much more manageable and predictable for the average homeowner. And check this out, I want to show you guys something before we go back into the interview. Susan pointed me to somewhere on their website that shows what California California homeowners tax bill would have been if Prop 13 never went into effect. So I just plugged in some examples for fun. If we pull this home, this is more of an average price home at 1.125 million, and then scroll down here on Zillow, it tells us the property taxes are about $5,400 per year on this house. Check it out though. If we go back to the calculator and we put their home value on this calculator of 1.125 million, they're saying that without Prop 13, the property taxes today would be over $30,000 per year. Going back to Zillow, let's just pull one more property for an example. This is a way more expensive one. This is that mansion we talked about a month ago that sold for $25 million. Property taxes on this home are really high already, over $133,000 per year. But if we go back to that calculator and we plug in the sales price of $25.5 million, look at this, guys. The taxes would be over $680,000 per year on this house without Prop 13. Yikes. Next, we get into why they have a case against the mansion tax and why the mansion tax is being called unconstitutional.
Right. So Proposition 13, in addition to capping how much your property taxes could go up, it prohibits similar taxes on the same people by another name, like a real estate transfer tax, which is a way of saying, well, you had a good deal and now we're going to take it all back from you. So that is prohibited by the state constitution. And as the courts have interpreted this, it's especially so for is specifically so for a tax that has dedicated the money to a specific purpose, whatever that purpose is. If you were dedicating it to police or affordable housing or schools, it is unconstitutional to do a real estate transfer tax for a special purpose. And that's what this is. And by the way, if anyone pays this tax before the legal decision is final, file a claim with the city for a refund. Because as long as you file a claim within 1 year of paying the tax, you will get a refund at whatever point this is declared invalid. Even if it takes 5 years for that to be final, you will get your money back. So on the website of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, HJTA.org, you'll see a banner that says how to file a claim for a refund of the Measure ULA tax. So be sure to let everybody know.
I know there's a lot of Californians out there who watch my videos, so if you fall into that bucket where you've recently sold your house or you're about to sell your house for $5 million or more, check out that link on their website. Maybe you'll be able to get this mansion tax refunded if they win this case.
This is not like a capital gains tax. This is a tax on the sale price, regardless of whether you have a profit or you have a loss. You owe this 4 or 5.5% on the sale price at the close of escrow to the city of Los Angeles, which is pretty harsh.
That's crazy, guys. So what she's saying is that let's say you bought your house for $8 million just a couple of years ago, and now due to the market turning, you're reselling your house, but you could only sell it for $6 million. You still are going to need to pay that 4% mansion tax on the $6 million sale, even though in this example, you're literally losing money on the sale of your house.
It's not just mansions, by the way. It's any real estate that sells in that price range, which includes virtually all commercial real estate. A lot of developments that are mixed use, that have residential and commercial, they were being developed and then they were going to be sold and they're falling through. Financing has become more difficult, according to real estate reporters in Los Angeles. And of course, it creates a competitive disadvantage for the city of Los Angeles versus the cities that surround Los Angeles, because Burbank is a separate city, Beverly Hills is a separate city, Calabasas is a separate city, Glendale is a separate city. This is all the Southern California real estate market, but it's only the city of Los Angeles itself that is subject to this tax. So it creates a disadvantage for people who are planning to develop something for the city. They would rather go outside the city and not have to deal with this.
Everybody reporting on this story, myself included, has been calling it a mansion tax. I mean, that's kind of a fun buzzword, but in reality, like Susan said, this is a tax on all real estate transactions over $5 million. So if it's true that commercial real estate developers are moving outside of LA to build their huge $100+ million developments, that's an even bigger blow to the LA economy. And so your group filed the lawsuit, I believe it was last year, is that right?
Yes, in December.
Okay. And so even though Most reports say that the tax went into effect on April 1st. This is actually on hold, is that right? Where the city is not able to use those funds until the lawsuit is settled in some way? Is
You
that
know,
right?
it's complicated. They're required to implement it because it did pass. It was an initiative. It did pass. It was declared passed. So they're required to implement it. But because there's a legal challenge, they are aware that they may have to refund all the money. So they're doing the budget right now for the city, and they're looking at all of those things. There was a report from the housing department that said don't spend anything on new positions that you can't support with existing revenue. So there's an awareness. We think we have a very strong case to invalidate this tax.
Last, I shared with Susan that there seems to be a good amount of people out there who support this mansion tax because all they see when they hear mansion tax is that we are going to be taxing the rich, which some people believe is a good thing. So I asked her if she has anything to say to this population of people who might not agree with this lawsuit that's been filed.
Well, we've already had two taxes in Los Angeles in the last 5 or 6 years trying to address this identical problem, and it's been a catastrophe. It's only grown worse. The money is going to big salaries in these nonprofit organizations. It's called the homeless industrial complex out here. A lot of people pulling down six-figure salaries for pushing digital paper across the desk and saying that they're solving the problem. And it's just getting worse. I think the idea of passing this tax on this so-called mansion tax, which, as I said, is really a tax on commercial property more than residential. The idea was, well, don't worry, you won't have to pay it. Someone else will pay it and it will solve the problem. So I think that was what was in the voters' mind. Uh, let's try it. This problem is terrible and I won't personally have to pay it. That might have been what the polling showed when they wrote the measure. But in fact, if you drive wealthy people out of California, it hurts the whole budget because we have a very progressive tax code. And if taxpayers leave, they're not paying taxes to California. And if enough of them leave, then there isn't enough money to run all the programs that the state has committed to. The more you drive the wealthy taxpayers out of California, the less money there is to fund the safety net.
For anybody out there who would like to support the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, where could they go to show that support, and in what ways can they support?
To support the lawsuit and lawsuits like this, go to hjta.org and donate to the foundation. Click the button that says support our foundation. It's tax deductible and the money goes to fund lawsuits on things, not just this, but other things that are similar. It's the only thing the foundation does is fight for taxpayers. So hjta.org is still fighting for taxpayers to protect them from those rapacious appetites of government officials.
Back in March, there were reports that this tax was going into effect on April 1st and that celebrities and other owners were scrambling to sell their mansions before the deadline. I went on to Zillow to look at what recorded and sold in the city of Los Angeles for over $5 million over the course of that last week of March, and there were a ton of expensive mansions that sold that week. It's impossible to know if those people just happened to sell their houses that week or if they sold that last week of March in order to avoid the mansion tax. But I will say one thing, it seems like sales have kind of slowed down from April 1st forward in that price range. It'll be interesting to see how this lawsuit with the Howard Jarvis Group unfolds over the course of the coming months, and if they'll be successful in their efforts to block the mansion tax and protect Proposition 13. You know we'll be talking about it again as this story develops further. I'll see you guys next time.